What's up, everybody? It's the Kino Corner here, back again, starting off 2020, hopefully pretty strong. I have some ideas about where I want to go in this new year. So I want to make video essays. I'll always be making video essays. I'm glad that my essay on the lighthouse is doing pretty well, but I also want to do some more casual content like this. So today what I'll be doing is I'm starting a new series that I'm doing about making a movie. As some of you know, I made a feature film about a year and a half ago, and I just want to impart some of the knowledge that I learned from making that film onto everyone who's watching. So you've got an idea, but where do you start? Well, an idea can lead you to a feature film, but a feature film isn't just one idea, it's a whole bunch of ideas usually. Most films aren't held together by just one single idea. You start somewhere and you build off of it. So how do you know that this idea is going to sustain itself at a feature length? Well, everyone works differently. So my advice may not be perfect for you, but I found that it works for me. And at any rate, it's a good jumping off point. What I like to do is when I get an idea for a film, and more than just the initial sort of thoughts, which could be just a random shot or maybe a scene that I like or something like that, when I get an actual story, I like to first write it as a short film. And what this allows me to do is that, for one, I get to see, is it complete in a short film? As in 10 pages, have I told the entire story? In which case, it's probably just better as a short film. I also get to see, does this story suck? You know, if I finish this 10-page or 20-page short film, does it suck? And the good thing is that a short film you can write in a day or an afternoon. I mean, some people take longer to write short films, but generally it's a small time frame. Feature films, no, you can't write them in a day. It's going to take you weeks, possibly months. I mean, some people take years writing a feature film. So it's good knowing in a day or two if the story is just worth it or not. Also, when you're writing as a short film, it stimulates your mind about the story, and you'll discover more about the story that you may not have known before. And maybe you can push something further and further. And so maybe you didn't have enough ideas for a feature film at first, but when you're writing the short, you grow more ideas for it, and you see how you can make it into a feature. So what you might encounter is maybe it works as a short, maybe it's just enough content for a short film, or maybe your mind is stimulated so much that it's too much for a short film. And in that case, you might want to write it as a feature. So let's say that you've now decided to write this as a feature film. Where do you start? Well, a feature-length script is typically between 90 and 120 pages. Of course, it can go longer and it can be a little bit shorter, but that's a very good length. The rule of thumb is that 1 page equals 1 minute of screen time. But like most rule of thumbs, it's just an approximation. So let's say that a page is just full of action lines. That page could last well over a minute. It could possibly last several minutes, but then say the page is just dialogue. That could be very fast, and that could last less than a minute. That's why they say a minute. It's kind of this gross, not really mathematical average. Like, for example, let's take the movie All Is Lost. It's 106 minutes long in length, and the page was only 32 pages. Or say The Irishman, which is 3.5 hours long, but the script was only like 140-something pages. But let's assume that you're making a conventionally paced film, so that the rule of thumb of 1 minute per page applies. You're going to want your script to be 90 pages or more, especially considering in post content and cutting in the editing room, so that even if scenes get cut, it'll still stay at a feature length. Now, when you watch movies, they may seem easy to write, but even a 90-page script is a marathon. So there are a few things that you can do to get to work. First off, get your characters in order. Characters are more important than the story. We see the same story over and over again, but what sticks with us are the characters. Now, you can have your characters have an arc, or you can maybe not have them have an arc. All that matters is that you make them good characters. So what do I mean by they don't necessarily have to have an arc? Well, let's just look at a couple of examples here. You have these rom-coms where there's this guy, he meets this girl, and then he decides to change everything about him at the end to be with a girl, and it seems kind of cheesy, and maybe it's out of character for him. And you can do this, vice versa with the girl also changing for the guy. And it doesn't seem really that believable because it doesn't fit their character. You don't really want that. On the other end is you have a character like Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men, who really doesn't have an arc. He just sticks to his own morals and principles, and he's the same character throughout the film, but he's still extremely memorable, and he's still a great character because he doesn't betray himself with an arc, because it wouldn't make sense for his character to have an arc. Now, other characters in that film do, but you have to look at your film and say, what kind of arc do they have, and does their arc make sense? In Wes Anderson's movie Rushmore, Max Fisher has an arc. He has a definite arc in the film, and Wes Anderson shows it with his costume design. But his arc is more internal, and it's not like this. He doesn't become a different person. You have to understand that when you're writing arcs for your characters, is that you don't want them to become different people at the end. You want them to grow. You want them to mature. You have to keep the characters consistent, and that is the most important thing. You have to make them memorable, and maybe your protagonist, you have to make the protagonist relatable or likable in some way, or at least interesting. And then throughout the film, keep them consistent. Once you get your characters down, or really more realistically, while you're creating your characters, you should also start to outline the story. Now, some people like to make these super detailed outlines, like 20 pages, 30 pages long. That's not really my style, but everyone works differently. Just do you, honestly, just do you. I like to write very sparse outlines, and I start to add more to it as I think of the story. Oftentimes, I go in maybe knowing the third act and maybe knowing the first act, and the second act is the hardest part for me personally because it's kind of that chaos act. It's bridging the two. I know how the film ends. I know how it begins. So that's where I focus a lot of my outlining, is to figure out what happens in the middle. Some people, they do it incredibly detailed all throughout, and some people hardly make outlines. I guess I'm somewhere in the middle, and it just takes a little bit of practice just to find out what you personally like. So now that you've finally made it this far and you have an outline, you have characters, you can now write the script. I advise getting a good script writing software. I personally use Final Draft. I know some people use Celtex, but honestly, once I switched over to Final Draft, I was really glad I did. It's kind of expensive, but it does go on sale every now and then, which is when I bought it. The only couple things I can say about actually writing the script is to keep up a discipline. The script isn't going to write itself, and your ideas really aren't any good if they're not on paper. Take time out of each day to write a little bit. With me, there are scenes and sequences that I can just breeze through, and I'm writing 10, 20 pages a day, no problem. And then I hit a brick wall, and I can't think of anything, and I get writer's block, and I often make the mortal sin of just stop writing when I have writer's block. And really, the only cure for it is just to keep on writing, is to chug through that scene, and maybe not write it super great on your first draft, and just make a note that you want to go back to it and you want to change it and make it better later. Because it's a lot easier to manipulate something that's already written, even if it's not great, than something that doesn't exist. And another thing I want to point out too is if you're not using Final Draft or Celtex or another one of these softwares that automatically format the script for you, make sure that your script is formatted correctly. There are plenty of guides online. If you send a script to somebody and it's not formatted correctly, they're just not going to read it. It's going to go right into the trash. And even if you have the next best script, no one's going to read it. When you finish writing your script, your work has really just begun, because now you have a rough draft. But hardly any movies are made from rough drafts. You have to polish it. And you're going to have to polish it and probably make several more drafts in the future. What I advise is to step away from the script for a little bit, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, enough to just sort of cleanse your mind. What I often do too is I might want to write a little short in between. I might want to work on a different project. That way I can come back to this script with very fresh eyes, and I can do a read through and find all the problems I have with it and what I want to change. And then when you get to a certain point where you might want people to read it, send it to your honest friends. Don't send it to friends who are just going to BS you. and send it to friends who have good taste and know what a good script entails. Because maybe they're honest, but maybe they just have no taste and don't really watch movies, and they can't really help you. For me, it's just maybe 2 or 3 people that I'll send my script to that I actually trust their opinion. And trust me, if they're good, they will point out flaws. And even if it's just general flaws, like why doesn't this happen? Or this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, or something like that. Those notes are great. You'll see a lot of your own flaws, and they tend to see more general flaws. Maybe they'll also find typos. It all helps to make your script better. Now, the process of selling a script isn't cut and dry. Not that any of this process is cut and dry, but I'm going to give you some hard truths right now. 1, if this is your first script, don't expect it to go anywhere. 2, if you haven't sold a script in the past, don't expect people to just automatically pay attention to you. 3, if this is your first script, it probably still sucks. 4, the script that's going to be your breakout is going to be your 3rd, 4th, 5th, or even later script. The best thing to do is to keep writing. And the more you write, the more you'll find your voice and the better your scripts will be. And 5, the best way to get a script turned into a movie is to make it yourself. If you're making the script yourself, put parameters on your work. The rules will focus you, and art flourishes in strict environments. When I wrote Wasted Hours, I wrote it about people who are my friends group, people who I know I could get to act in the film. I also didn't write in stunts or special effects or anything like that, and I wrote in locations that I knew that I could get for cheap or for free. Within the script writing process, I kept the budget down to a minimum. So maybe you want to make a sci-fi and not a teen comedy. Well, then make it a grounded sci-fi like Safety Not Guaranteed. Or maybe you want to make a globe-trotting spy thriller. Well, maybe don't make it globe-trotting. Maybe shoot it in one city. Of course, you can always fake other cities within a city. Even big budget movies do that. What I'm saying is that budgets don't limit the scope of genres that you can tackle, but they do force you to be more creative. These limitations will help you discover yourself as a filmmaker. And it's also a bit more liberating to have all these parameters on you, and you work in a space that is clearly defined, than being told that you can do whatever you want. As a final note, and this is a plea from me, is just write something that's honest. Write something from the heart, and you'll have a lot more fun shooting it, and it'll show on the big screen. It'll do you so many more favors than writing a sleek but soulless film. That's why we have Marvel movies. When people go to see indie movies, they want to see unique voices. So just find your voice and run with it. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you like the video. And in the description below is the link to my Fiverr where I can edit your scripts. The next video in the series will be on production, and that's going to be very fun. I'm going to tell you some production stories for my movie, as well as give some filmmaking techniques that I learned, and so on and so forth. See you in the next video.